It is Sunday, 22nd of the 6th, 2025. The time, 5 minutes past 11. That can only mean one thing. Well, two things maybe. Somebody's birthday. I don't know their name. Cameron something or other. And in the second instance, there are very many F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Danny Rick and the abuse that dude is getting on social media for doing what? A gambling advert. What are we doing here? This makes no sense. We'll talk about Max Verstappen and Lily. So too, we'll talk about Charles Leclerc kiboshing the rumour that he's going to leave, doing what some say he should have done a long time ago. We'll talk about Max Verstappen coming in for some praise for, in quote, in inverted commas, unmasking Ted Kravitz. We'll talk about Liam Lawson saying that his team, the Racing Bulls, haven't been brave enough. So too, we'll talk about Ferrari upgrades. John Elkann desperate now to replace one Frederick Vasseur, who apparently, just like King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, doesn't have a contract for 2026. What are we doing here? Techier than techie things. Go on then, let me talk about Christian Horner in the first instance, because he's saying, just like Wolf of Wall Street, Leonardo DiCaprio settings, I'm not leaving, nor are we giving up. The points gap between driver championship leader Oscar Piastri and Maximilian Verstappen, 40-something points. I want to say 43 points with 10 races having gone. That is material, especially when Oscar Piastri is in an hora buena, fine form, desperate now to play defence like Max Verstappen has done so brilliantly in previous seasons. Christian Horner says tosh, however. Anybody that's giving up hope as far as the Bulls that are red and their hopes of winning a fifth consecutive championship of the drivers' variety is smoking something very, very insidious. Christian Horner says, the points gap, there's a significant points gap between us and them, McLaren, but we don't give up on anything. We're not even at the halfway point in the championship yet. There's a lot of racing to do. There's a lot of sprints coming up. If we can keep chipping away and getting performance out of the car, then nobody gives up on anything. And I like that from Christian. I appreciate his tone, optimism settings. He can't say anything other than that if he's the pioneering leader, the disruptor of a team principle that we all know him to be. But I don't know, I'm starting to get a bit sceptical. Never ever in your life do we bet against Max Verstappen either, but bloody Nora. The hill up which he and they will need to climb grows more steep in terms of its gradient by the second. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Max Verstappen, Racing News 365 have put out an article where they praise the authenticity of Maximilian Verstappen. They are having the conversation under the umbrella heading of the interaction between Max and Ted Kravitz last Grand Prix, where Ted Kravitz asked Max a question about the Canadian Grand Prix, whether the mistake of handing back the position to King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, what are they doing about it? Stephen is the new guy replacing Jonathan Wheatley. Have you had conversations with him? What are you doing, Max Verstappen, to ensure that doesn't happen again? To which Max Verstappen said, what are you talking about, chap? Like, I'm not. You want me to throw one of my team members under the bus? You guys, aka the British press and media, have criticised me, been damning about the times when I've done that previously. So you want to throw gotcha questions out at me now? Max Verstappen said, I'm not going to throw one of my team members on the bus. Thank you very much, Ted Kravitz. Not singling anyone out, Ted Kravitz said, well, that's not, to be clear, that's not what I asked you to do, Max Verstappen. And Max responded thus, well, you did, because you mentioned Stephen, the replacement for Jonathan Wheatley's name. So what else did you think I was going to do? Ted Kravitz, put some respect on Maximilian Verstappen's name for holding his ground as well. You might, given the history between Max and Ted and Sky F1. Fellas, the guys and girls over at Racing News 365 report that one of Sky Germany's backstage Boxengasse podcast members says that they had a conversation with Ted Kravitz at Media Day in Canada. I think the English media are sometimes very harsh and direct in their questions, and unmasked him. What do you want me to do now? Well, you want me to throw one of my team members on the bus? Absolutely not. This person continues. I really appreciate that about Max Verstappen. He's so clear and keeps eye contact at all time during dialogue. I think that's what makes him so unique. If you talk about authenticity, He's one of the most authentic people in the paddock. And he's not the first person to say this about, forget Max's driving for a second, the way that he conducts his activities outside of the monocoque, the cockpit. Martin Brundle said, you know what, if there's a driver up and down the grid that you'll get a straight answer from, a straight shooter of an F1 peddler as far as the way in which he conducts his interview, it would be a Max Verstappen. Oh, and by the way, if we're doing Max Verstappen news, Max and Kelly Piquet have agreed that they don't want to show the face of their brand new daughter Lily to the world's public and press and media, and I don't hate it. I can't hate it. That's their decision, and there is upside to that, is there not? There is surely upside to privacy, some say, especially in this weird and wacky world that we call F1 media. Oh, and by the way, Charles Leclerc's come out and he said, I'm not leaving. I don't know where the rumour has come from talking about me leaving Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse on top, but it's nonsense, says Charles Leclerc. Well, I would put forth to you this supposition, Charles. How many more of your prime years as an F1 driver are you going to give away to ineptitude, waste at the altar of Scuderia Ferrari incompetence? Non-rhetorical question, Charles Leclerc, aka modern day journalist, because we all know, chap, that you're brilliant, point to point, probably one of the quickest, if not the quickest on the grid, as at June of 2025. For me to argue anything but that would be disingenuous, but we all know this as the oldest Charles Leclerc truism, that sometimes that dude can lower his level. He can sink to the level of the Ferrari ineptitude rather than raise it up, as Michael Schumacher did 2000 to 2004. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem, a durable, competitive problem. If again Charles Leclerc over the course of his career is to win himself a championship of the driver's variety, lest he wish to be like his old mate Jean, modern day Jean, a lazy, and win himself nothing. The epitaph of Charles Leclerc's career is currently at risk of being one of these ones: unfulfilled potential. And I don't want that for Charles Leclerc. He doesn't want that for Charles Leclerc. So why wouldn't he have conversations with Mercedes, particularly if King George Russell is going to go to pastures anew? Why wouldn't he? I was arguing back and forth with Shez and Baxley about this. This isn't something, you can make an argument. Why don't you wait till 2026, end of, and see where the landscape lies? Well, here's why. Because decisions, it's not just making the right decision in Formula One. Carlos Sainz Jr. has told you that on the Nude Project podcast. It's the right decision at the right time. If Charles Leclerc all of a sudden at the end of 2026 decides that he wants to go to Ferrari, but George Russell's already left to go to Aston Martin, and Maximilian Verstappen has filled his place at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth Mercedes, then Charles Leclerc making that decision that all of a sudden he wants to leave, there's no room at the Mercedes in or anywhere else, because everybody would have already made the moves, and herein lies the problem. I don't want for Charles Leclerc to do as Fernando Alonso did. Do you know what I mean? Make the right decision at the wrong time, because again, that's an exercise in futility. That wastes everybody's time. And again, for the avoidance of doubt, in Charles Leclerc, aka modern day journalist, we are talking about one of the quickest peddlers currently on the grid. Sebastian, it's been good, thank you, mate. I appreciate the wishes. It's been good. A nice little cheeky meal with the missus yesterday that I'm super grateful. Dried, you're a legend. I appreciate you guys and the well wishes. Go on then, let's talk about Daniel Ricciardo. I always forget whether it's Ricciardo or Ricciardo. It is Ricciardo, he said, but again, the phonetics would indicate differently. Danny Rick came out and he's done something different. He's gone on Twitter. He put out a tweet. It's a sponsored tweet. It's a gambling website. To which all F1 fans and Danny Rick fans, stans, extremists and fundamentally said, no, Danny Rick, what are you doing? I'm going to read out this article. He's linked up with a betting firm, Dabble. He's promoting something called Tailgates, about which I understand zero. But it is a gambling website ultimately. And it is a sponsorship deal, monetization settings. But Danny Rick has been away for a gazillion years now. What did you expect him to do? Can't Danny Rick make himself a bit of cheddar here and there? Right, apparently not, because Ricciardo has come out on, because in response to the tweet, A gazillion people have come out and said, no, Danny Rick, what are you doing? Gambling websites destroy people's lives. How embarrassing, Danny Rick. Just wait around for the Cadillac F1 gig. No, this is nonsense. I love you, said one tweet, but this is not you, Danny Rick. Another tweet said, I would have supported the tailgate business idea without direct link to a betting company. I'm disappointed, man. Oh, the humanity. I don't know how to feel about this. Listen, if Derek Warwick wants to come out and get a cheeky gambling website check, then it's very different, right? Very different circumstances. And by the way, Derek Warwick's only been suspended temporarily. He will be back, by the way. But if he wants to do it as a steward who's meant to be earning their corn at the altar of objectivity, then that's a different thing, right? But if Danny Rick, who's retired, a retired F1 driver, wants to link up with a gambling website and get himself some bread, I don't see what the honestly, controversial gambling is as a subject. But bloody Nora, like Danny Rick can't get himself a cheeky jet. I tell you what, this is indicative of the fact that F1 is 1,000 gazillion years behind every other sport. If you watch UFC, you can't listen or watch a UFC portion of content without hearing a gazillion ads about DraftKings. Do you know what I mean? This is just commonplace now in any other sport, but because we're in BC times, Neanderthal F1 settings, this is just like gambling is like, oh, this is do you know what I mean? Thou shalt not. I'm like, what are we doing here? I just honestly, genuinely, chat, this doesn't make sense to me. The extent of the outrage isn't commensurate for the crime, if indeed what Danny Rick has done is a crime. A cheeky sponsorship deal at the altar of a gambling website for a non-steward, somebody who doesn't need to be objective. What's the outrage for? What is the outrage about? Non-rhetorical question, chat. What's the gut Benzi would come into it? What I don't understand, Safak. Help me out here. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But I digress. Go on then, let's talk about what's next? What's the next topic up on the docket? We need to talk about Ferrari. And we need to talk about Liam Lawson too. So let's talk about Lawson next. Liam Lawson says that his team haven't been brave enough. Now, this is at the altar. We have this conversation under the umbrella heading of C6 versus C5. Pirelli came out and said this week that they need to do a couple different things. Tinker with the C6. Make it a faster tyre. It does deg nicely, but there's been this conversation in recent weeks over the C5 versus the C6. The C5, of course, was last year's super soft tyre. They've made the C6 softer, quicker, but not quick enough to make it a dilemma or conversation, meaning therefore that you're going to get times like when Aston Martin, in the form of Alonso and Stroll, and so too George Russell at Imola, put the C5 compound tyres on and were quicker on the C5s than the others on the grid were on the C6s. Oh, the humanity. This is a sort of automotive pugilistic tax avoidance, loophole settings. Therefore, they need to make the C6 quicker. To that point, Liam Lawson says, our team haven't been brave enough to leverage this automotive pugilistic loophole. We should have been on the C5s at Imola, just like Aston Martin and George Russell. George had told you that but for a cheeky wobble on his outlap, he would have been a 10th up the road and would have dropped it on pole in Imola on the C5 yellow labelled compound tyres, and that's got to matter. Pirelli need to pull their finger out. This isn't good enough. That's why Charles Leclerc et al. Are testing the C6 Pirelli compound tyres for next year already. Lawson says, though, that they haven't been brave enough, that they needed to roll the dice, as did George and Aston Martin. Touche, but there's something to be said, Liam Lawson, that you're talking about this having underperformed your teammate Isaac Hadjar materially. Time and a place for these comments, Liam Lawson, methinks. And now is not the time nor the place. Go on then, let's talk about Scuderia Ferrari. As always, Leclerc will never leave before winning a world championship. But this is the issue, David. Surely, this is sort of like a catch-22, some logic fallacy loop. Surely you could make the argument that as at June 2025, that the probability of Charles leaving and then winning a championship dwarfs the probability of Charles Leclerc winning a championship at Scuderia Ferrari. Surely the ineptitude is loud at this stage. And when we talk about them, you'll hear and see I think the chaos is only just starting. Bearing in mind, Frederick Vasseur doesn't even have a contract for 2026. What are we doing? This is worse than George. George is promising a young Hungary line, a prospect in Formula One. He's been brilliant. One of the drivers of the year. First thought, even Max Verstappen has had to put some respect on King George Russell's name. And he doesn't have a contract for 2026. What do we do? Well, we all know why. Because Toto will drop kick in the chest George if that means that he can get the signature of one Max Verstappen. But what about Frederick Vasseur? Are you telling me that that's the same for John Alkin? That John Alkin won't look to a Christian Horner or this chap that runs up the Ferrari WEC program to supersede one Frederick Vasseur? Absolutely. 100,000 gazillion percent. John Alkin does not want Frederick Vasseur as team principal at that team any longer. You only need to look at the stats and facts. Do you know what I mean? 14 points was the delta between Ferrari and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship in 2024. Where are they now? It's 193 points, I want to say. It's a lot. 191, excuse me. It is a lot. That is humongous. And again, it's not just the points gap in absolute terms. It's the delta year on year. 14 points was the gap at the end of last year. And already it's 191. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. That is underperformance. If you're talking about trajectory, the line of travel as far as Scuderia Ferrari, this is really, really poor. And then you get the communication. And then you get mixed messages. Charles Leclerc and Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton are talking about upgrade. Bring me the upgrades. We need them. The car, the operating window of the car is far too narrow to facilitate us extracting or optimizing for our chances of winning races and therefore championships. Fix that then. Bring upgrades to address that then. That's the supposition of Lewis and Charles. Frederick Vasseur was like, no, it's not about upgrades, is it? No, it's the setup. We need to work in a way that's more coordinated goal crop. Well, no, it's not really, Frederick. Bring the bloody upgrades, Fred. What are you talking about? And when you have this, you think that John Elkann, the C-suite exec level bods, are going to like that and make everybody look like numpties. A fish stinks from the head down as far as your strategic objectives translating into operational ones. Success, therefore. And these guys are pulling and pushing in different directions. It's nonsense. This is the wire when they're trying to get the table through the bloody door, and the two at one end are pushing and the other two at the other end are pushing in the same direction. You can't get anything done if you don't have goal congruence, if it isn't singularity of focus. And everything that we've heard coming out from Maranello over the past 2 months has been nothing if not the opposite to goal congruence. They are working in silos. It is not good enough. And now we hear that Frederick Vasseur don't even have himself a contract to 2026. He's got, listen, shall we be honest? He won't last. I think this time next year, Frederick Vasseur won't be a bum in a seat at the red team with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse. I don't think he can be. It's just not been good enough. I don't know how you substantiate. I don't know how you make the Frederick Vasseur case. I don't know how you can do. Like, how do you, under what terms do you couch the case for Frederick Vasseur staying on? Non-rhetorical question, chat. Help me out. I don't think it's going to help. Dried biscuits, you're a legend. I appreciate you. Go on then. Here's what we know about Ferrari upgrades. Remember, again, we have this conversation under the umbrella heading of Fred saying, no, upgrades, nothing to see here. We're not invested in that. There's other things that we need to tick off as first order priorities. Now, however, it turns out that Frederick Vasseur's done an about turn. Yes, we will be bringing upgrades at next weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. Frederick Vasseur has revealed. He confirmed that upgrades will be rolled out on the SF25 iteration over the coming weeks, although the Frenchman had previously erstwhile downplayed the extent of the competitive edge that the changes could make. What do we do? Brett, they're nonsense. I just can't even, it's not even funny. You know, I shouldn't laugh because it's not a laughing matter. All of my concerns about Fernando Alonso, his career, his best years wasting away in a car not fit for purpose, are now parlayed into Sir Lewis Hamilton. Not that Lewis Hamilton is in his prime at all, by no means, but yet and still he's capable of winning races, and he now has a car and he's working with and for a team that are nonsense. The way that they work, their manners, they don't make sense. Those are Lewis Hamilton's words and not mine. So now I feel like we're at DEFCON 1. This is proper chaos. And what makes it worse for Lewis, it is looking over to his previous team, Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley and Bixworth, and they've built themselves a rocket ship. George Russell now is winning races with some consistency. What are we doing here, chat? Polls. Lewis has got to be looking at that saying, what have I done? This is nonsense. We'd all hoped that Lewis had made another McLaren to Mercedes and nailed his timing again. For the avoidance of doubt, it's not just making the right decisions, it's making the right decisions at the right times. Carlos Sainz's word on the new Project podcast, not mine. And it feels like Lewis might not have made the right decision for himself. Bucket list. I was a massive proponent of Lewis going to Ferrari once upon a time. I was tick it off, like live your life, eat yourself some pasta, do you know what I mean? Live your Maranello life, Milan, etc. I get it, I understand it, but now it's not looking so fantastic, is it? Doesn't make sense. Lewis Hamilton settings, France. Oh no, new regs might buy him another year, France. Signing Lewis under the team's current circumstances has been a massive blow. I mean, why didn't I sign Newey as well to go? Oh, so annoyed. I'm frustrated. I'm left annoyed. Go on then. Frederick Vasseur has confirmed that upgrades will be rolled out over the coming weeks. Okay, circuit specific ones. Right, here's the problem with the SF25, and it is the car more than the car and the team, but the car as a proportion of the whole. If we're talking causation, the car is the lion's share. Right, fix your fudging car, Ferrari. Unless you give Sir Lewis Hamilton a car using which he can have confidence to get late, to be last of the late breakers, to take crazy minimum speeds through high and medium speed turns, then you're going to get 90% of Lewis Hamilton. That's always been the case. Nobody can argue that in good faith, or anything different even in good faith. What Lewis Hamilton doesn't have, and Charles Leclerc to a lesser extent, he doesn't have confidence in the rear. The rigidity of the suspension is not where he needs it to be. Hence why he's taking less speed through these minimum speed, high speed even turns than Charles Leclerc. Hence why the last of the late break, I think, isn't working. Some would say that Lewis has never been a ground effect car merchant, but I think we can argue that back and forth. I think that's something of a misdirection. The car isn't good. It doesn't give Lewis what he needs, nor Charles, but again to a lesser extent. So fix that, therefore. Ferrari have been numpties for the longest time, making mistakes at the altar of poor low-level decisions, both strategic and managerial. Didn't get bloody Adrian Newey. They were meant to transverse or change over to the meta, pull rod at the front, push at the back. Didn't bloody do it until when? The last year of the rule and reg set. What do we do? Like, what, who? My son is 5 and he would know, 4 years old, even though I always get that wrong. My son is 4 years old and he would know better than that. This is nonsense. Absolutely ridiculous. Why would you change 99% of the components of the car in the final year of the rule and reg set? Why? This makes no sense. Mate, you may as well just focus on 2026, but I feel like, yet and still, what holds them back is what Jean Todt managed to navigate and circumvent so adeptly. It's this level of false seeming. We need to be seen to be doing X, Y, and Z, irrespective of whether substantively that's what gets us to the next step. Do you know what I mean? Why don't you just invest in 2026 then, from now? Lewis has said that if you're not going to win anything, if you're 191 points behind already in the constructors, then what's the point? What, you're racing for like second place? What? You're racing to become vice champion constructor? Like, what? Scuderia Ferrari, yeah. Of course, and again, we have this conversation in the following context. This is Tifosi's team. They will not tolerate any length and breadth of failure. You better win something, Frederick Vasseur. Do not get it twisted. You don't have another 2 years worth of tenure. You have yourself at the very most 12 months. You won't be here at the end of next year if it keeps continuing like this. I'm telling you, it's going to get taken. Go on then, let me read out this. so you guys understand what's going on. Frederick Vasseur in the first instance has said that there's upgrades coming, particularly around the rear suspension. So again, they can broaden that operating window within which SF25 can optimize for its performance, give the drivers exactly what they need. This is a Mercedes car. It feels a lot like the W13, a Diva that only operates in cool climes. Do you know what I mean? It feels like Lewis has jumped out the Mercedes fire straight, or jumped out the Mercedes pan even, straight into the Ferrari fire. And it's burning hotter than was ever the Mercedes. I'm telling you, it's chaos. Lewis can't believe this. Go on then. Here's what Fred said. There's going to be circuit-specific declarations there's been circuit-specific declarations at recent races. Ferrari tweaks, and that now they're going to start bringing up gates. Frederick Vasseur's confirmed this, and it will be done as at the Austrian Grand Prix next week. And thank God, sort out the bloody rear, the rigidity, the suspension. But again, they're not giving themselves enough of a lead time, right? The intention, continues this article, is to be able to run the car in a more performance-oriented ride height window. The problem is, though, the SF25 is built at the altar of running the car super low. Everything, chat, everything is derived. All the speed, all the stability, all the Venturi, the ground effect, downforce, etc. All of that works when they run it super low, as they did at the Chinese Grand Prix sprint. Run it a bit higher, then you lose all of the gift of the SF25. So I'm not sure whether they can afford to. I'm not sure this is going to help, chat. I think the ceiling for these upgrades isn't here. It's here because they need to fix their fudging car fundamentally. This is the issue, chat. And I don't know. I think Frederick Vasseur is toast. Oh, and by the way, before we go into these bloody upgrades, you'll recall that Frederick Vasseur said, and Montezemolo in the first instance said around Ferrari leadership, that they haven't had what they need for the longest time now. It's been years. They've been very far from being at the front of the pack, market leading as far as their inspirational, pioneering, unique brand of leadership. They haven't had it, still don't have it. That's Montezemolo's words, not mine. Legend of Scuderia Ferrari, red car with yellow badge, black prancing horse atop. You saw Montezemolo rock up at a Grand Prix a couple Grand Prix weekends ago, and the pit crew were giving him the guard of honour. That's how highly respected he is. So when he comes out and says that the leadership aren't leading, what do you think John Elkann's going to be thinking then? What do you think the Ferrari shareholders are going to be thinking, therefore, and wanting to be actioning? They're going to want to sack off Frederick Vasseur. Of course they are. And then when Frederick Vasseur says we've changed everything, the car, the personnel, the structure, there's only one thing that hasn't changed that still needs to be changed. About whom or what might Frederick Vasseur be talking if it's not for the C-suite exec level bods, the shareholders, the guys who sit at the board? You know what I mean? The exec level bods, it feels like it's one of these that, again, the strategic bods, the Elkanns, the CEO, the CFO, they're pulling in one direction and Frederick Vasseur is pulling in the other. It's the oldest truism in Ferrari history. Jean Todt managed to nail this, circumnavigate it perfectly, is the thing that ultimately is going to do over unalive Frederick Vasseur as far as him being a team principal at the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse at the top. There's quite a few GPs where Carlos looked miles better than Charles. Oof. Are we going to go into that? Charles is better as a driver, a better fit for Ferrari. That's just the truth. Than is Carlos. That's the truth. But I'm a big Carlos Sainz fan. You guys know me already. This season has been difficult for everybody already. Don't disagree, Max. Max would almost be World Driver Championship in that McLaren. 1,000%. You heard Peter D. Windsor saying the other day that if you give, it would be dangerous for the McLaren boys if you were to fit Max Verstappen in that car. Indeed, they wouldn't see which way he went. Go on, let me tell you about this Ferrari stuff then. Here's what Verstappen. Here's what Frederick Vasseur said. It's my first half of the year new team. It's interesting to see how different teams work and operate. Oh, so this is Lewis talking here. There have been times in my career where you've had a whole bunch of upgrades very, very early on in the season and you plough ahead very early, then you stop and taper off. Then sometimes it's slower. It's also the last year of this generation of cars, harder to find performance, and you could at least focus on next year. Lewis is saying 2026 needs to be the focus then. The fact is, with this car, we hopefully can still fight for a second in the Constructors, which would be great, but I want a car that can win next year. That's my priority. That's Lewis Hamilton talking. I think they're done. I think it's a wrap. Full stop, new paragraph, 2025. Ferrari, what's the point? Again, I understand that false seeming is important. They've got to be seen at the very least to be fighting for second. But if they don't get that, you know what I mean? If they sacrifice 2026 at the altar of a second place in 2025, that, ladies and gentlemen, is nonsensical. It makes no sense. And I'm going to keep using that turn of phrase because that's the turn of phrase that Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton used when describing their way of working, their culture. He was speaking specifically to the way that they set up the car for the Canadian Grand Prix. Lewis said words to this effect: I've been here a gazillion times. I'm the winningest driver around the circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. I am. I know what it looks like, how we should be working, what it looks like to set up a car around here. And when I was watching Scuderia Ferrari, the team, the engineers, the racing minds, when I was watching them set up the car, Lewis Hamilton said, his words, not mine, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. You couldn't be more damning in your words if you try. And Lewis Hamilton normally likes to tick all the PR boxes, but he's had enough. He's done. Gonzo frustrated. Why? Because of the extent of Scuderia Ferrari's ineptitude. It doesn't make sense. And this is coming from Lewis, by the way. He didn't even want to tell us what was the specific issues and mechanical and automotive, mechanical and aerodynamic foibles around the car. Why was the car so rubbish? Sir Lewis was asked the question. I can't go into specifics. However, the way that they work does not make sense. It's chaos. The Montezemolo, it's not the Montezemolo, I'm told, Neil. Apparently that's a misnomer. It's Montezemolo. Oversaw Schumacher Braun Todd era, but also dismantled it. He was the one who pushed Schumacher out in exchange for Kim. I know it's hard. Neil, I tell you what, as far as the next regime, it's always hard. The transition period is hard. That's why you could give Frederick Vasseur a bit of grace, because it wasn't his team when he first arrived. You know what I mean? He needed to put in place a Loic Serra, put in place a Sir Lewis Hamilton. But now, that's the gift and the curse as far as Frederick Vasseur's concerned. If we're trying to make the case for him continuing, as Martin Brundle did, as team principal of the red car with the yellow badge and black prancing course. Now, this is Frederick Vasseur's team. It's been his team for the past 12 months, as near as makes no difference. Sans the appointment of one Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. Now, Frederick Vasseur can't make the case. You're not in probation period anymore. This isn't honeymoon anymore. This is your team. Make some progress. Therefore, I don't know, chat. It's going to get techie than techie things for the lad going forward. And I'm not going to hold my breath for any success from Ferrari in 2025. It feels like that success train has passed, it's sailed, it's left the station for Ferrari. And I'm not sure ultimately that the tenure of Frederick Vasseur as team principal of the red car with the yellow badge and black prancing course doesn't fall at that hurdle. It's going to get techie. T-minus 7 days to the Austrian Grand Prix. Between now and then, the prosecution rests no further questions, Your Honour.